Hey, what's up, Mad Men fans? Kino here, and we're back with a whole new season of reactions. This time we're looking at season 2, and I just watched the first episode. For those that think young, so it seems like a significant chunk of time has passed between last season and this one. A number of things have happened. I'll get to most of those. I wanted to comment real quick that the opening that opens with like a montage of everyone getting ready for work again. It reminded me a little bit of the Community, like the season 2 start of Community. It just reminded me, I think, because of Trudy plays Annie in that in Community. So again, just reminded me of that a little bit. But I'm not sure which one came first either. Probably Mad Men. That's what I'm thinking. Like I said, a number of things have happened in the interim. So Salvatore is married. He's the gay one. So he's with a woman now. Obviously, because during this time period, that was not okay. Betty is taking horse riding lessons. So I don't know when that started, but seems like she's being a little bit more active. Like, last season she was really struggling to find her kind of purpose, or she wanted to do stuff, and now she's done that a little bit, and so she's stepped up and found like a hobby. What else here in the interim? I'm just talking about stuff that happened in the interim. Yeah, that's pretty much everything from that part. But there's a couple of plot lines happening in this episode. One is that Don gets a physical, and he's told he needs to cut down on the drinking and smoking, of course. It's Valentine's during this episode too, so he has some problems later in the episode. He's having sex with his wife, and he loses his heart on. So I think Don's really kind of struggling with his age. Probably the cigarettes and alcohol are part of it too, but also, just getting older. That's compounded by the fact that he's being told to hire younger people for the company because their clients want young people who are in touch with the young crowds to work on their advertisements. So he has to hire some young people, and that, of course, makes him feel old and intimidated. There's some conflict, I think, brewing between him and Duck, the guy they hired for account services. So we'll see, because Don obviously hates authority, so we'll see how he deals with that. But what we didn't really see in this episode was, what's his name? Roger Sterling's, kind of reaction. He's back in the office now, but we didn't really see if he's, happy about Don's new position. It kind of sounded like he wasn't a little bit, but I'm sure they'll do something with that eventually. Meanwhile, Peggy has been gone for a few months, and she's just come back, and she's lost a bunch of weight, and people are speculating what happened. Some people think she got pregnant by Dawn and had a baby, but that's just a rumor, and Pete doesn't know, of course, that he was the father of her child that she, gave away. So while his wife is struggling to get pregnant too, she's crying in this episode that she doesn't have a baby. So that's some funny irony there. What else here? So Betty runs into an old friend of hers on Valentine's Day. She's a prostitute now. And that got Betty kind of thinking about she's oh, poor her, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the episode, her car breaks down and she's trying to seduce the guy who's servicing her car. And it's she's kind of titillated, I think, by the idea of a woman, selling herself for something. I think there's probably something you could read into there too about taking control over sexual, nature or whatever, and using it for her benefit rather than her husband's or whatever. So I'm sure there's some thematic readings into there, but I think just generally we see Betty kind of being more confident, being a little stepping more into the, into an assertive role here. Meanwhile, Dawn is reading this book about, I think it's like meditation. It seems like some kind of hippie book. And I think he's, again, at the end of last season, remember, he missed out on the chance to be with his family on Thanksgiving. And so I think he's taking family a little bit more seriously now. He wants, like, the advertisement for the airline, he wants it to be about family. And at the end of the episode, he mails a copy of the book to someone. We don't know. I don't think I saw who it was, too. Maybe I missed it, but maybe it's that one girl who left him, the Jewish store owner lady, Rachel. But yeah, we had a lot of like different stuff going on this episode. I didn't necessarily have a clear like, oh, coming out the gate strong with like a very tight thematic episode. Again, it seems like the impression I'm getting from this show is that each episode is just one chapter in a larger story. And like I said, I'm interested to see if that pattern continues, because even season 1 felt like it wasn't like bookended with like, okay, here's like a cohesive thing. And again, maybe I need to watch it more than once to kind of really get it. Like, I do get it to an extent. I get some of these themes that they're dealing with, but it didn't feel like one cohesive story that kind of comes to a close at the end of the season. It feels just kind of like dreamy and like left open for more stuff to happen. So, we'll see how they deal with this season too. But definitely not a bad experience watching it. I just think that they could make the endings a little bit more like final, where I was like, okay, I get what this episode was about. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. I am excited to be here for another season. We have a long way to go. There's 7 seasons, so I don't know, maybe one of them shorter or something, but we'll be doing this for a while now. But I am excited to be actually tackling Mad Men, because I know a lot of you were super excited to see me do it. So, but anyway, we'll talk more when I watch the next one, and I will see you guys then. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back with another episode reaction, and dolled up again. You know, it's that Mad Men style. I have to have it going on to do these reviews. I'm just kidding, of course. I was wearing a suit for another reason. Got home, decided to watch an episode, and I thought I would just leave it on. So I just watched the episode Flight 1, which is the second episode of season 2. Now, this one felt a little bit more complete to me in terms of, okay, it's a storyline about one thing. Or not necessarily just one thing, but like it felt like a completed narrative rather than just like part 1 of a narrative, you know? In this one, American Airlines has a one of their plane crashes. It's a big, disaster basically. And it's also an opportunity for Sterling Cooper to get American Airlines as a client. But in order to do that, they have to dump their existing airline, Mohawk Airline. And they're not even getting American Airline guaranteed. It's just like, we're dumping them to make ourselves look good to this airline. Because that's how much their business is worth. Now, this really upsets Don. He thinks that they should be loyal to their existing client rather than going after this big fish. And so he's unfortunately overruled, and he feels really sad about it. It's interesting, though, at the end of the episode, this woman approaches him, this Japanese waitress at this bar he's at, and kind of is hinting like she wants to hook up with him. And Don is kind of going through like a new change in attitude, where he's like, not tonight. It seems like he's trying to be a better person than he usually is. So that's interesting to see. But complicated onto this airline story is the fact that Pete's father was on that airline and died. And he is not sure how he feels about it. He had a rocky relationship with his father. And it's even more compounded by the fact that his company is going after the airline that killed his father. And Duck asks him to help out, try to nab the client. At first he's like, no, dude, like, my dad just died. Like, I can't do this. But at the end of this episode, he shows up and kind of uses the fact that his dad died, to try to land this client. We'll see if they actually get him or not. I think they will. But even if they don't, it shows that he's prioritizing business over family and emotions. In the same way that a lot of these characters do. They put their career first. I mean, that's par for the course for these, high stakes business people. So, again, it was an interesting storyline to see him dealing with that, and I think it humanized him in a very interesting way. Meanwhile, Peggy's got something going on too, which is she goes back home to visit her family, and it's revealed that her son was taken in by their mom. So the mom's raising it, kind of a not like a usual situation, but it's heard of that sometimes if a kid gets pregnant too young or whatever, the parent will take it and raise it like a brother or sister to the actual parent, So that's interesting to see that, and interesting to see her at the end of the episode holding her son. And we'll see if they end up having a relationship, or if it's a situation where it's like later on she'll be like, oh, I wonder what would have happened if I had actually raised this kid, and will it be too late for her when she actually wants a kid? That storyline actually plays off a little bit of what's happening with Joan and I don't remember what his name is. He's one of the ad executives who's always acting like a douche. He's the one with a beard now. So he's living in an apartment, I guess, in Newark or something, and he has a party at the beginning of the episode, and he's dating this black girl. And Joan goes up to the black girl and is like very rude to her. I don't think it's that she's racist. Like, maybe she is a little bit or something like that, but I think it's more so she doesn't like the fact that this guy is with her, because she used to date him, apparently. I saw some hints of that last season, but I didn't quite pick up on it. It's very subtle, but they used to date, and she, like, I think she feels threatened by her, and also jealous. And she kind of tears this guy a little bit to pieces by pointing out that he's dating this girl just to kind of be like, it's like he wants to date a black girl because it makes him unique kind of situation. Which I don't know if that's true or not to this character. I don't know a lot about him yet. But it sounds like something that could be true from what we've seen of a lot of these characters, which is, again, it's kind of like American Psycho, which is, they treat, their lives as like commodities to be used as like a status symbol. And he maybe wants to be with this girl because it's like, again, it's the 60s. It's kind of, it's not unheard of. Like, it's like, oh my God, like it's illegal or something. I don't think that's the case anymore, but it is like, oh, a white man with a black girl. That's, it's something that's special. And I think she was accusing him of, again, almost fetishizing this girl to basically be like an interesting talking point and make him seem more like hip and cool than being like a genuine place of love. And again, I don't know if that's true or not for that character, but it's how Joan sees the situation, which is that's a statement on how she views life and these characters in general, because she is like that as well. She uses romantic relationships for status and wealth and stuff like that. So it's a great little detail. It speaks a lot to her character. At the end of the episode, he steals her ID and puts it up on the board, showing us she's actually in her 30s. Which, again, it doesn't matter so much nowadays, but for the time, being an unmarried 30-year-old woman, is like, oh, what's wrong with her? So she's kind of embarrassed by that, but she also responds by not showing weakness. So, a very subtle storyline, but I thought a lot of interesting character moments here that reveal a lot about who these people are. I thought it was very, very interesting. Like I said, a very good episode. Felt like complete. Like I was like, oh, okay. this episode meant something, even on its own, not just part of a larger picture. So, very impressed by it, you know? So that's pretty much everything I had to say about this episode. I'll probably watch another one here soon, so I'll talk to you guys then. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back with another reaction, and I just watched the third episode of Season 2, The Benefactor. So, there's really only 2 storylines going on in this episode, which is, well, I guess maybe kind of 3. The first is with, I guess I can just get the small one out of the way. Harry Crane, he opens up Ken Cosgrove's paycheck and sees that he makes like $100 more a week than he does, which I think in the 60s is like almost $1,000 more. That's a lot of money. And he feels like he should get a raise and stuff, and so he comes up with this idea to sell advertisement space on this very controversial episode of television that no one wants the advertiser space on. So he comes up with that idea, pitches it to the lipstick company. They decline it, but his boss is impressed enough by it that he makes him the head of the television department and gives him a slight raise. So, just an interesting little like office storyline. I don't know if it'll be factored into something like if the television stuff will be featured more prominently. I think it will, because I think television is growing bigger and bigger as it goes on, but for now, just a simple little story. This is interesting. So I probably shouldn't read too many of these comments because they might spoil things for me, but I mentioned in the last the last season reaction video that Harry Crane was my favorite of the little account executives, whatever you call him. He seemed like the nice guy among the group. Like, he wasn't like so much of a douchebag like the other ones are. But someone said not for long, so I wonder if he changes or something. We'll see. But that was just an interesting comment. But regardless, that's one storyline. The other is with Betty continuing to ride. There's this guy in her like horse riding, I don't know what you'd call it, a class or a, whatever she goes to train at, who likes her and tries to kiss her, but she pushes him away. But she's clearly like, I don't know what the right word for this. I think she's like excited by it. It's like titillating, I guess, because her hands were shaking afterwards. I mean, she likes this guy too. Like, it's the classic kind of, where she acts like she hates this guy all the time, but she's clearly like into him a little bit, So we got that going on. And then the big thing is, of course, they're filming this commercial for this potato chip company, and they have a comedian doing the commercial. And when the company owners come in, his wife's there and she's very fat, and the comedian makes fun of her. And it's this whole situation where they have to somehow convince this actor to apologize. He has no reason to, because they have to pay him either way. But Don needs to do it because he looks bad. He was out watching a movie, which I was like, what for? I think maybe just because, I don't know if that movie was something special or not. It looked French. But he looks bad because he wasn't like watching all this stuff happen. So he's got to save the account. He ends up fucking the dude's wife, the comedian's wife. And when he comes home and he like puts dish soap or whatever and washes his mouth out because he was like kissing her and stuff and he smelled. Meanwhile, his wife had gotten his watch engraved for him, so he's like, oh, what a piece of shit. But he pretty baller move what he does. Like, the wife's trying to the comedian's wife. Her name's Bobby. I should just use the name. She wants money to get him to apologize, but then Dawn just like fucking grabs her by her hair and like grabs her by the pussy, and is like, "You're gonna fucking," like a puppet almost, like, "You're gonna fucking make him apologize." She's just like so kind of turned on by his like dominance that she does what he says. Which I know some people could read that as like, "Oh my god, it's so sexist that a man could just grab her by like that, and it's sexual assault, and Dawn should be fucking canceled or whatever." But it's clear that this woman, just from what we've seen of her personality, she's like she said on the phone to Dawn, she's like, "I like being naughty and then going home and doing the right thing." And so it's like he read the situation. He knew that she was looking for like something to kind of like dominate her, like it turned her on, and it's like a game to her almost. So I guess you could say it was sexual assault or something, but it's clear that she likes this kind of like dangerous play. Dawn knows people, so he knew that. And then she gets the comedian to apologize, which he does, and saves the account. So that's interesting. And then again, we'll see what happens with Dawn and Betty. Like, I think they're headed for some trouble because, one, I think she's a little unsatisfied with, her home life and stuff. Two, I think she's going to discover that Dawn's cheating, because she's making a big deal out of her friend's husband cheating. And I think she can, like, kind of see that there's parallels with Dawn. And she, she's the guy who was, like, trying to kiss her was like, "You're deeply sad." And I think she I think that's her character. She's sad in a way I don't think she quite understands. But I think as the longer things go on, I think she's starting to realize what it is specifically that's making her unhappy. And I think things will come to a head with her and Dawn, which we'll see how they'll handle it. But it's interesting to say the least. Thinking back, I mean, I don't want to go too long on this one review, but Dawn is sometimes a character who's hard to read, even for me as like the viewer. I don't know why he was watching that movie. Like, I think maybe it's just that he's like unhappy with his life and he's looking for things to fill it. And he doesn't really like being in that work. Like he likes it, but he also doesn't like it. Just like Betty likes being a housewife, but she also doesn't. That's like the classic kind of rich people problems in film. It's like, I like my life, but I don't. So maybe that's as simple as it is. Because he's a complicated character. Sometimes I don't quite get who he is either. So I'll have more thoughts the more episodes I watch. But yep, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll check out the next one soon. All right, back with another episode. This is episode 4 of season 2, 3 Sundays. So this episode obviously takes place, I think, over the course of 3 Sundays. It's right around Easter, so it's like 2 weeks before Easter and then Easter itself. So again, a very, very good episode. Dealing with a few different subject matters, all kind of revolving around children, but all felt very satisfying to watch. The Peggy one a little bit less so, but I'll talk about that. So, Don's at home with his wife and just hanging out at home when he's told that he's got to come in because the pitch to American Airlines, the big airline corporation, has gotten moved up. And he's got to come in to work, but his son, like, I think he puts his cheek, like his chin or something on the hot griddle and burns himself. So the mom has to take him to the emergency room. And so he has to take Sally's daughter to work with him. Very cute little girl, by the way. I really like her. It's Sabrina from the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Like, she grows up into her. So it's cute to see her being like a little kid actor in this. Very precocious, very cute. So he brings her down there to work, while they come up with a pitch for American Airlines. Presumably it would have been a good pitch, but, right before the meeting, the guy who they were pitching to got fired, and some other guys came in, but it was like, oh, this isn't going to happen, And so they lost Mohawk Airlines for nothing. Don's disappointed in that. So he goes back home, and Bobby again spills something. Betty has been on Bobby a lot for misbehaving, and she's been telling Don to like hit him or spank him, and he doesn't want to do it. And so he's pissed off coming home. Bobby spills a drink. She's like, do something, and he grabs the robot, throws it at the wall, and it breaks and stuff. And he's like, he's pissed off, and he and Betty kind of have a fight. Where Betty's like, you don't take responsibility around this household. You just come home, be the hero, while I have to deal with them. And he's like, doesn't want to hit them, and they get into a little fight. And he shoves her and stuff, and it's this whole thing. And then Bobby comes into the room, and they have a nice little moment where he talks about, his father, and then later on he tells Betty what his father used to beat him. He doesn't want to be that way, so. I really like that moment. Like, I like that it's when he comes home and it's just one of those moments where it's like, I'm like up here and I come home and it pushes me up even more. So he even tells her, he's like, you want a piece of what I got at work? I'm going to put you through the window. He's like, I'm controlling myself, but you're like asking me to release it here. And if you've ever just had one of those bad days and all this shit just keeps piling on top of each other, it can make you blow up, and very, very relatable. I also like it would be easy to also like villainize Betty for wanting to hit their kids, but I can see from her perspective too, where it's like all day long, they're doing whatever, and Dawn comes home and she's like, I want you to share some of the parental responsibility and share some of the punishment, rather than you get to be their favorite because you just come home and be the hero while I have to discipline them. It's old fashioned to hit your kids. That's a very controversial topic. But I don't think we should villainize her for that. Like, she grew up in this era, and it's more so like, again, like I said, she wants just Dawn to take some responsibility in the parenting of their children. So, very complicated situation, nuanced, and like I said, very, very relatable. Even I don't have children right now, but I can understand the emotions that these characters are going through. On top of that, we have a storyline with Peggy. There's this new priest in town, and he likes Peggy, like not like sexually, like he's a priest, but I think he's like, oh, she's charming, I like her, like in a not even like a flirtatious kind of way, like maybe a little bit, but like more so in just like, oh, you're a pretty cute girl, I want to maybe hang out with you for a little bit. And Peggy's sister is jealous because she's like one of these like goody two-shoe girls who gets ignored because she always does the right thing, and everyone just kind of leaves her alone because she can handle herself or whatever, and they kind of dote more on Peggy because Peggy makes more mistakes. And she feels neglected, and so she goes to the priest, I think with the intention of like, she confesses and says that like, oh, I hate my sister because she got pregnant, with the intention of like giving the information to this priest, like that was her pretense, which I think is a sin she should confess in her own right of doing that. But regardless, I mean, there's truth in what she's saying too. But at the end of the episode, I couldn't quite tell. Maybe I need to rewatch it again. I couldn't quite tell if he was being cold to her, because he gives her an egg and tells her it's for the little one, and then she kind of gets the understanding that he knows that it's her kid. I didn't know if he meant it in a like a, not a fuck you kind of way, but in like a, you do kind of way, or if it was like a genuine. It was hard to read that scene. I was a little bit like I wasn't 100% sure. Again, I'm not faulting the show for that. I think it's good to be nuanced, but I wasn't quite sure how to read that. That's two storylines. I guess there's a third one with Roger Sterling and this prostitute. Like they bring in this prostitute to woo a client, and then Roger sees a prostitute and he wants her. and he wants her to like kiss him and have dinner with him. I guess because like Joan's not seeing him anymore, and so he misses having a girlfriend. Me personally, I'm like she's a prostitute, dude. Like, if you want that, just go get another like mistress. I don't know if I'd want all that. I mean, I guess that they call it the girlfriend experience, but I'm like, you can go find another girl. Like, just pick up a girl at a bar who wants like a sugar daddy, and you could have that. So I don't get this whole idea of like paying for it in cash directly. But I guess, people make the argument that you pay for it regardless, right? But yeah, Rogers, he's an interesting character. I think he wants to be loved. I think that's what it is. I think because we saw a scene at the beginning where it's like his daughter. I think the implication, they were talking about the wedding. His daughter's engaged, but she didn't want a wedding. And I think the implication was that like maybe she didn't want to dance with her dad because she doesn't like her dad. And so he's trying to be loved from this prostitute as like a surrogate for his, which sounds kind of gross, but like as his daughter. Not that he's like a pedophile or something, but just I think he doesn't feel loved in his family. And so he's looking for it with like these women, like Joan and now this prostitute. That's just the way I'm reading it. Again, this is a particularly hard show to analyze. Like there's a million ways you could read some of these storylines, and I don't know if I'm completely off base or not, but that's just kind of the impression I'm getting on first glance. But yeah, those are the three main storylines. Great episode. I was very impressed. So I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll check out the next episode soon. Hey, what's up, Mad Men fans? Kino here, and we're back with another reaction. This time I just watched the 5th episode of Season 2. I think it's the 5th episode. The New Girl. So, the titular New Girl... It's funny that I say titular, because all the guys are hitting on her. But the new girl of the title is... her name's Jane? Jane Siegel? I think that's her name. But regardless, Dawn has a new secretary because what's her name? Joan is engaged now, so she'll presumably be getting married and taking time off. So they need a replacement for her. So it's this new young college girl. She's very hot, and all the guys are hitting on her. And it's not so much episodes about her, because it really isn't. She's just there. But it's meant to remind us, I think, of Peggy, and she was the new girl in the pilot, of course, and we're seeing her journey as how she became, or how she got to where she is now, and meant to reflect on what that means for her in the future. I don't know if they've hired another secretary since her. Lois was from the Office already, but she's officially not the new girl anymore. If they haven't hired anyone, and I have something in my hair right here, but I can't get it out. There it is. Okay, so sorry about that. I could see it in the camera, and it would bother me. But so she's not the new girl anymore, and how she's ended up where she's at has been a complicated journey of, one, her own professionalism, and that's something that Bobby Barrett, who's staying with her, I'll talk about the plot in a second, but I just want to get my thoughts out on this. Bobby Barrett says to her, it's like, she's like, Dawn made me a copywriter, and she's like, no, you made yourself a copywriter through your hard work. So one, we're meant to reflect on that, but two, Dawn did have an impact, which is at the end of the episode, we see a flashback of when she was in the hospital after she gave birth, and Dawn found her when she was missing and was like, no, I'm not going to fire you, and, don't let this get you, like, just keep moving forward, forget about it. You'd be surprised what you can forget about. And he's, of course, speaking about his own, past secrets, his whole identity as Dick Whitman, and he sees that she's in the same place that he was at, in this very, critical moment when he's in this intense trauma has happened to him, and he's like, just move forward, move forward, and you'll get farther than you think you will. You think they're like, oh, this thing happened to me and now I've got to deal with it. But he's like, no, just let it go. Which is not great advice, because we see he still struggles with it even to this day. He's deeply unhappy, in part because he has not faced his past, and I think he feels like a fraud in many ways still. But it's a nice moment between the two as they share in the same kind of experience here. So I liked this episode felt very thematically tight, revolving around that. But basically, Dawn goes to meet with Bobby Barrett. They're going to the beach to have sex, basically. He's drunk, so he gets into a car crash. Peggy has to come bail him out of jail. And then she takes Bobby Barrett to her house, or her apartment, because she can't go home to her husband yet, because he'll realize what she was doing. And they bond again. It's a nice moment. She has this line where she's talking to Peggy, and she's giving her advice. You're not going to get anywhere until you start treating Dawn like an equal, which is good advice. And then she's also like, you can't be a man, so don't even try, which I was like, people nowadays would probably have a problem with that statement, but I get what she means. It's like, not she can't get to where she wants to be by pretending to be one of the guys, because they're never going to accept her fully, right? Like, they let her into the club, but they're not. I mean, it's still an issue to this day, but they're like not paying her an equal to what the work she's doing, because they're like, you should just be grateful to be here. She does not make as much as the other guys. I don't know if she should or not, depending on her responsibilities right now. But just in general, this world. It's like they've let her into the guys' club, but it's not. She's not one of them. And if she just plays their game, there was a scene, I think, like a few episodes ago, they had a lunch meeting or something, and he's like, Peggy, can you go get something or make a call or something? It's like they made her do it because she's the secretary, still in their mind, so it's that it's good advice for her to be like, she's got to learn to play her own game. And I think as the series goes on, we're going to see that. And again, see her step, not just being lucky to be there, that the men let her be there, but like, no, I'm here of my own, through my own talent, regardless of what you think of it or not. And as the show goes on, and it goes more from like the early 60s to the later, we're going to see those kind of feminist revolutions happening. What else in this episode? I guess that's pretty much everything. Dawn at the end, again, the family stuff is like, I think it's meant to just make him feel bad for basically being the kind of shitty person he is. Is like, oh, his family loves him, they want him around. That's why his wife won't let him have salt anymore, because he said he had high blood pressure, which he does. But he was blaming the car crash on that versus, fooling around. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything I have to say about this episode. Very tight, thematically. Thought it worked really well. It just goes to show the very nuanced and complicated way this show tells stories. It's very well done. I can see, again, like I've mentioned this before, I can see why some people are like, oh, nothing happens. Like, there's no dramatic consequences for what Dawn has been doing, but it's very subtle and it's character driven, and I do think we will see it come to a head eventually. I think Betty's gonna eventually figure out what's going on, but for now, again, like I said, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll check out the next episode soon. Hey, what's up, everyone? Kino here, back with another Mad Men reaction. As you can tell, I'm in a different location. I'm over at a relative's house, and I had some downtime. Thought I'd watch an episode and then just record, wherever I had room. So, on the go today. But we just watched the 6th episode, I think, of Season 2, Maidenform. Now, there's two real storylines going on this episode. The first is with Peggy not feeling like one of the team, especially with the other guys, that she works with. She's given this account Playtex like a bra, and their competitor Maidenform has these like really sexy ads that are provocative, and Playtex is jealous, even though they are doing more business than Maidenform is, and so Duck convinces Dawn basically to come up with a unique ad for them, even though it doesn't make sense from like a business perspective. And of course Don's not happy about that because, one, he's still mad at Duck for making him get rid of Mohawk in order to get American, which didn't work out. And there's some other problems that we'll talk about. But Peggy feels left out. The guys are going to the bar without her. They're coming up with ideas when she's not around, and she feels like left out. She feels like left behind. And so Joan gives her some advice. Even though Joan's never been in this world, she's never been a part of the copyright team. She tells her that, like, if you want to be taken seriously, one, stop dressing like a little girl. She's still wearing her kind of secretary getup, and then also start acting like one of the guys. Start like taking it. And so at the end of the episode, when they all go out to like this strip club, she ends up coming to in like a very provocative dress, and the guys are like, oh, they're all happy to see her, and so she's kind of forced her way into the group, and is taken seriously. Although Pete is of course Pete, and he's jealous because he likes Peggy even though he is sleeping with some other girl, and he's married and all that kind of stuff, but he likes to have her around as like his girl. So that's one storyline going on. There's more than just two, I should say. There's like probably about like three. There's a little one with like Pete sleeping with this model that's not really that important yet. Might be, but so the other main one I get is of course with Duck. So his ex-wife, because he's getting divorced, or he is divorced, drops off their kids at the office, and their dog too, because she has to go visit a relative or something, and the kids tell him that their mom is getting remarried to another guy. This obviously, is not good news for him, even though they're divorced. He doesn't like the idea of her moving on and them having like a new kind of father figure in their life. He has a talk with Dawn about the conflict between them. They kind of settle that. And then at the end of the episode, he's like about to take a drink, which I don't know if I missed this. I don't know if he was like an alcoholic or something, or he doesn't drink. But he's very tempted to drink, which they make it seem like it's a big deal if he does or not. So I kind of think he doesn't drink. They might have brought that up and I just forgot about it. But instead, though, he takes his dog, who has been hanging out in the office all day, and takes it out of the building and shuts the door and just leaves him out there. Because the dog reminds him of their family, which is really fucked up because it's a beautiful dog. But, from a character perspective, that's why he does it. And I bet you a lot of people hate the character because of what he did there. But, that's the other like real main storyline. The other one is with Dawn. So he continues to see, what's her name? Bobby Barrett, the wife of the comedian guy. And she basically tells him that like the women that he sleeps with have been like gossiping about him and like saying how good he is at sex and stuff like that. And he gets really pissed off at that because obviously he doesn't want that getting back to his wife or anything like that. And he ties her up and leaves her there. I think she can get out of it. I don't know if his intention was to leave her tied up so that her husband would find her. I don't think so. But I think she can get out of the tie that he tied her up at. And at the end of the episode, he's shaving, and his daughter Sally comes in, and she's like, just watching him shave, and she's like, "Don't worry, Daddy, I won't talk so you don't cut yourself." And I think it reminded him of what he told Bobby. He's like, tell her don't talk. And so I think he's just reminded at the end, like, what a piece of shit he is as a, cheating bastard. And, the reputation he now has. And that's why he tells Sally to leave. But very subtle writing there. Very, it's not something you pick up on. Like, when I was watching it at first, I was like, wait, what is this supposed to mean? But I think a lot of the shows like that. A lot of it's like, it leaves it up to you to interpret what it means. But I definitely think there's, like, meaning behind all of this stuff. Like, it's not going to add up to, like, not everything's going to be, like, a big plot point, but it's like, oh, this is thematically related to, the conflict that Dawn's basically going through. Interesting episode. Don't have too much more to say on it. It's like 100 degrees outside, so I'm going to go back in, but thank you guys for watching, and we may or may not do another one out here. We'll see how much time I have to watch another episode. So, talk to you guys then. Hey everyone, back with another reaction. Same place, of course. Just watched another episode. This is the 7th episode of Season 2, The Gold Violin. So, interesting episode. We've got to focus on some different characters than usual. One of the main storylines revolves around Ken Cosgrove and Salvatore. So Ken gives Sal a story he wrote called The Gold Violin. Sal reads it, invites him over to his house to talk about it, and we can see that there's an attraction there. Like Sal really likes Ken, and he he's obviously not gonna come out and say it because this is the 60s, but he just likes kind of being around him. They have dinner with his wife, or Sal's wife, or I think she's his wife, but he basically just ignores her completely because he's gay, he's not into women. She's just there as kind of a beard to hide him. So it's he probably cares about her as a person, but there's not that attraction there that makes him really interested in her. Although, to be fair, I don't know how much of that is him being gay and how much of them is just being men at the time. Like Dawn ignores his wife in this episode too. So, but again, Dawn ignores his wife because of an attraction to another woman. So it's not necessarily like it's that he's attracted to someone else, not specifically that it's because he's gay, I guess. But that's one storyline happening here. Another is four of them: Harry, Crane, Ken, Sal, and the secretary Jane, Dawn's secretary, the really pretty one that they all like. They break into Cooper's office they don't really break in, it's open, but they go into the office to check out this painting that he has. Because Crane has a meeting with Cooper, and he thinks like the painting will come up, and he wants to know about it. Later, we see that the meeting had nothing to do with that, and that Cooper's just doing it for money reasons. And we also see in this episode that he's interested in more than just like being an advertisement. He's there to get, I don't know if political power is the right word, but he's there for like more than just like it's wealth, but it's also power. So Cooper's playing a deeper game than we might first assume he is. But anyway, Joan finds out about what happened, and she decides to fire Jane. Jane then goes crying to Roger Sterling, and Roger says, you're not fired, basically. Goes behind Jane's back, or goes behind Joan's back. And I think Joan realizes that when Jane tells her what happened, that Roger Sterling has taken interest in her, just like he used to have with her. So she can't fire her, and she sees what's going on, basically. So I think Roger and Jane will get together, which will be interesting because that's definitely a May-December romance. The girl's like still in school. She's like 19, 20, and he's in his late 60s probably. So we got those storylines going on. At the end of the episode, Dawn, so in this episode he buys a Cadillac, and we're getting, again, hints of his past more and more. We don't know what they mean quite yet, but I think by the end of the season we will. So we learned he was actually a used car salesman back in the day. And we have a scene where this woman comes up to him and is like, you're not Don Draper. And then it cuts there, so we don't know what happened. But presumably this woman knows the real Don Draper that he impersonated. So we'll see what he did with her. I don't think anything like dramatic. Like, again, this is not a murder show. Even though they teased that in one episode, it's not. So we'll learn more about his past there. But he ends up buying a Cadillac. He takes the board position. And it's funny. There's a scene where they're all at a picnic. And then it's a nice little moment. And then at the end of the picnic, Don like throws his can of beer away, like just into the grass, and then Betty like dumps all their trash from the blanket just straight onto the grass. They just leave. Now it was a funny scene. It was like, oh wow, this is not considered acceptable today. I mean, people do it, but it's considered very rude regardless. So I wonder if this is a statement about like the times they're in. Like, I know this is like before a lot of these like commercials, like don't litter, don't pollute, the Native American commercial. I know this is before a lot of that stuff. So I don't know if it's a statement necessarily about the times they live in, or maybe it's like Dawn and Betty just not being considerate people. Again, I don't know how to completely read all these things from my first viewing, but it was interesting to see. I was laughing at that. But then at the end of the episode, they go to a party hosted by the comedian Jimmy Barrett. Barrett tells Betty basically that he knows that Dawn and his wife are sleeping together. Betty, refuses to believe that, but we can see that she's angry because she pukes at the end of the episode. And then, he says to Dawn, like, you're scum for sleeping with another man's wife. So both making them feel bad. And, Dawn does feel bad about the situation. But an interesting conflict. And, this is going to, like, be a brain worm for Betty. She's going to be thinking about it all the time, wondering where he is when he's out. And I can see them actually having to confront this issue before the end of the season. She didn't really confront it last season, even though she had suspicions. But, I think she's going to have to. And I'll be interested to see if we're going to have, like, a Whitecaps moment for Mad Men. But pretty much everything I had to say about this episode. I may watch another one here. We'll see. But regardless, thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk soon. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back again. It's nighttime now, so it's dark out, but just watched another episode. I'm getting through a bunch of them today. And I can't remember the title of this one. I didn't remember it when I saw it. I'm just using the AMC app and just going through each episode. But this episode deals with two big storylines. The first is with, I guess there's probably like three, really. The first is with Dawn and Betty. So Betty, they have a house party where they throw a dinner party, and it's for like a boss, but Betty basically buys Heineken beer, which Dawn had like placed in their supermarket as kind of like bait for her to buy it, because he was trying to make a point about their new strategy. And so Betty feels humiliated, not because of anything like real, but it's just like, oh, you used me as a test, and like it's kind of like a joke on her. Not that anyone's like really like, oh, laughing at her, but it makes her feel excluded. And I don't know if you can hear that in the background. There's like fireworks going off. But so this is kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, as she finally confronts Dawn about his cheating that she heard from Bobby Barrett, or what's his name? Jimmy Barrett. And they fight about it. Dawn denies it, but she's really reminded of it throughout the episode. And then at the end of the episode, she tells Dawn not to come home. So he ends up sleeping in the office, drinking a bottle of Heineken. It's a very thematic product placement. Like I pretty much called this. I knew it was going to come to a head between the two of them, as she found out the truth. So Makes a lot of sense. The second storyline is with Joan. So Harry Crane gets in trouble because one of their commercials aired like right after this controversial part of an episode, and so it made their product look bad. And so he's told he has to read all the scripts and make sure there's nothing wrong with them, but it's way too much work for him. So he ends up giving the job to Joan, and she ends up reading scripts and really liking it. Again, kind of like Peggy. She was comfortable in her secretary world, but then she got the chance to do more, and she finds it very empowering, and she likes doing it. She's good at it, too. But at the end of the episode, Harry hires, like, a man to do the job, so she's robbed of it, and, she doesn't say anything. And again, throughout her whole, like, appearance, she's been like, oh, I don't want to do any work, I want to find a husband and, settle that. That's the woman's game. But now that she's tasted the man's world, she's like, oh, I want some of that too. I don't know if she realizes it or not yet, but it's definitely like, she's like, oh, I'm just, my beauty, that's all I am right now. Whereas I could have a chance to really show off my mind and stuff beyond just like knowing the game of how to get a man. Like, she was great at that and great at the secretary world, but she was like, oh, I can be more than this. Which I think is something universal that all kind of people kind of feel. It's like you don't want to just be in your lane. You want to move up and try new things, and that's what kind of stimulates people and makes them really want to do good work. So I appreciated that storyline. The third is with Peggy and this priest. So he asked her to help out with the CYO dance, which is girls like choose their partner or whatever. And she does it, and then the priest uses it as an opportunity to be like, so, do you have anything to confess to? Because remember, her sister basically told the priest that she had a baby out of wedlock, and he's pushing her to make a confession, and she almost does it, but she ultimately decides not to. But, she's wrestling between the two sides. On one side is what Dawn told her, which is always move forward, don't look back. Although we see how, that's not always the best thing for, Dawn. He struggles with it all the time. And so Peggy's torn between that and this priest being like, no, people are what matter. Don't turn your back on people, be a part of it, accept your faults, and, really move past it. I don't know if the priest is a great guy or not. He could have some personal, problems himself, but for right now, at least, it seems like he's pretty genuine and just wanting to help her. But we'll see. He might turn out to be like a bad guy or something. But I think they're going for something a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about the episode. So thank you guys for watching, and I don't know if I'll do another one here. It's getting a little bit late, but hopefully I'll be back in my normal situation next time. So talk to you guys then. All right, back in the usual environment. Excuse me. And I just watched the 8th episode of season 2, I believe it is. 6-month leave. So, or maybe it's the 9th episode. I'm not 100% sure. I've kind of lost count of where I'm at. But this episode is interesting. It's the title refers to this incident that happens. Basically, they're going to give a presentation, and Freddie Rumsen, who has been kind of a not a background character, but he's like, the story's never focused on him until now. He's kind of an alcoholic, and so he's been drinking a lot. And right before their presentation, he like pisses his pants and passes out. And they have Peggy step in and basically take over for him. And then Pete Campbell, who, he's always trying to manipulate his way to the top. He tattles, basically tells Doc Phillips and everything about it. And even though Dawn wants to, keep him around, because we see that Dawn is a very loyal person to a lot of these people. He's overruled by Roger Sterling, who they basically make him take a 6-month leave of absence, but it's basically like he's fired. Like, he's not coming back. This is the first step, and then they're gonna, once the 6 months over, they're just gonna, so he's gone. And it's a sad moment because even though we don't know a lot about it, he's not like the most compelling character. He was like a nice character, and like Peggy particularly is affected by this because she is he's the one who first recommended her to be a copywriter, and was always nice to her, and he's really one of the nicer ones, like like Ken Cosgrove and the other guys. They tend to be the ones kind of making like obnoxious stuff about the secretaries and everything like that, but as far as I can remember, Freddie really never did that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, he was a drunk, but he was never like, being obnoxious to people or being mean to people or anything like that. He was a nice guy. So we're sad to see him go. While they take him out like for a night of drinking and having fun to say goodbye. And while they're out there, they go to like this illegal gambling parlor, and Don runs into Jimmy Barrett and punches him in the face, which is funny to see. But beyond just that, he has this like kind of heart-to-heart conversation with Roger Sterling. They talk about what do their lives mean, and like you have to move forward and go after what you want and that kind of stuff. And that inadvertently leads Roger to basically decide that he doesn't want to be with his wife anymore, Mona, and instead is leaving her for Dawn's secretary, so Jane. I predicted they would get together. It does come a little bit out of nowhere. Like, we have not seen them like having an affair or anything, but it's implied that like, oh, they've been seeing each other. And so, yeah, so Roger's leaving his wife for a secretary, and that's obviously gonna be a problem for a lot of people. Dawn at the end of the episode is like, I want her off my desk. Like, I'm not dealing with your bullshit. So we'll see how that goes. But Jane, we haven't gotten to learn too much about her. She seems like a little bit of like a Joan, where she knows what she's doing. She's not this like kind of doe in the headlights kind of thing. Like, she kind of has that, like, she plays that angle, but it's kind of clear that she knew, like, going into Roger's office, what that was going to lead to, that he would step in for her because she's beautiful, and she knows how to get the men's attention, just like Joan does, which I think is why Joan was so threatened by her, because she's like a younger, I don't want to say prettier version of her, because they're both beautiful women, but in a lot of the guys' eyes, the fact that she's younger and newer makes her prettier and more attractive than Joan is. So, to see that happen in front of her eyes, we can see why Joan doesn't like this girl, even more so than just, she kind of had the same thing with Peggy a little bit, but Peggy, I don't think, was nearly as much of a threat to her, because Peggy wanted, like, the career stuff, whereas Joan wanted the relationship stuff. But again, we've seen Joan be thrown into kind of a freeform now because she had a taste of the career stuff and found that she really liked it. And so we'll see how her old lover, Roger, marrying this younger woman affects, them, or affects her particularly. Because it definitely seemed like Roger and Joan had a much, like, they had chemistry. Like, it was immediately apparent that they had something there. And of course she's getting married now, but, people being people, I'm sure she's going to be affected by this. But that's the main storyline. There's some other stuff with Betty that I didn't quite get what was happening. So, like, she's kicked Dawn out, right? And she's on her own. And then she, like, invites the guy who kissed her tried to kiss her that one time, to go. She invites him to like lunch with her friend, but she doesn't show up, and it's like she's setting up the guy with her friend. I didn't quite get why she was doing that. Maybe she she wants to have an affair with this guy, but she's not ready to like take that step. So it's like she's kind of living vicariously through her friend. But I wasn't 100% sure if that was like, if that meant something that I wasn't aware of. Like I mentioned this to you guys before. I'm not suggesting that I completely understand every single nuance of the show right when I watch it. But it did stick out to me as like a reaction to all the stuff she's going through, you know, her depression that she's feeling in this episode. And I think it is important. It feels like all the beats of this show, for the most part, they feel important thematically, even if I don't quite understand them right away. It feels like, oh, this means something, and I should pay attention to it. It's a show that it's like The Wire in some ways, not as much. I wouldn't say as much like thematic in terms of the overall, like about America and about life and stuff in general. This seems to be more thematic about like the characters. It's kind of like if you the Mad Men feels a little bit like if you took The Sopranos and The Wire, you took the family elements from The Sopranos, and you took the kind of slow pacing storytelling of The Wire, put them together. That's kind of what I feel like with Mad Men, which is great because I love both those things. I definitely think Matt Weiner, the creator, has learned a lot from his time on The Sopranos. I've seen interviews where he talked about it before, but definitely he learned a lot of nuanced storytelling from being on The Sopranos. And I think so far this has been like a really entertaining show. I like it. Very engaging to watch. Pretty much repeating myself at this point, so I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, and we'll check out the next episode soon. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back with another reaction. Just watched the 10th episode of season 2, The Inheritance. Now, this is an interesting episode. I always like the ones with Betty and Glenn. I always think I'm not going to like them. I'm like, oh, what are they going to do with this storyline? But it's actually always kind of really touching in a way. And so let's just go through the plot. Betty's father has a stroke, or he had a stroke. And they go up to visit him. And he's like kind of losing his mind a little bit. He's, the stroke has caused some dementia or something, basically, but he's not really the man she remembers anymore. There's even a scene where he thinks Betty is like his dead wife, and he like grabs her breast and stuff, and it's a very disheartening for her. Not just because of the that part of it, but just the fact that, he's losing his mind. He's this, powerful figure to her. And to see him kind of reduced to this state is very sad. And it's not like super important to the plot or anything, but she has this like black nanny, who we can tell from like their interaction that this woman has been a part of her life for a long time. And has been like something of like a second mother to her. Possibly even more than her actual mother, because there's a lot of implications, that even though Betty like really idolizes her mother, from what we've seen of her, like from what she's described, she sounds kind of like mean almost, like she criticized Betty a lot, might have like abused her. I don't know how far that goes, but it's kind of implied that Betty is kind of like idolizing her in her mind better than she actually was. But regardless, this nanny was, in her life and a caretaker for her, and she, has a lot of affection for her. And it reminded me a lot of Gone with the Wind, the character of Mammy, and Scarlett O'Hara. That kind of dynamic. It's a cliche actually, to this point that some people actually consider offensive. The kind of stereotype of like the black nanny who just serves the family and is like devotes themselves entirely to them. But it was an interesting moment. It reminded me of that, but again, not super important to the plot. But she's like, Dawn goes back to the house with her, and they they pretend to like be a family still. Sorry, my voice is a little hoarse right now. But they're pretending to still be like husband and wife. And I mean, they are still husband and wife, but they're pretending that nothing's going badly. She even has sex with Dawn. He's like sleeping on the floor, and then she comes down to have sex with him. But at the end of the episode, she kicks him out still. She's like, she doesn't know whether she wants to be with him or not. And when she goes back home to her actual house, Glenn is there. He's like hidden away in like the dollhouse. And he wants to run away because his mother is like not caring for him at all. She just cares about her boyfriends and stuff. And he wants to run away with Betty, who he's kind of in love with. And like I was saying, I'm always worried, like, is something like, like not that she would ever do anything with a child, but like, is this going to be like awkward or cringy or something? And it's actually always turns out kind of, where I was like touched by the stuff that happened. Betty has to call his mother because of course it's the law. At the end he says he hates her. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry. And we can see that they're both in the same place. It's why Betty went to him at the end of the first season when she was like scared and didn't know what, to do. She went and talked to him because he's the only one who can really relate to the problem she's going through. Like the other women in her life kind of can too, but they don't want to admit these problems to each other. But with this child, she can actually be honest about how she's feeling and not be judged for it. It's a very, like I said, it's a very touching moment. Like I said, they're both in the same place of like not feeling love from the person who's supposed to be providing it for them. They feel trapped and they both want to run away. But at the end, when Betty has a conversation with Helen Bishop and finally admits to her, like, hey, I'm having problems with my husband too. And she's like, I feel like I'm going to float away without Dawn. And then Helen's like, that's the hardest part, is realizing you're in charge. Which is a really interesting statement because it speaks to like, like who Betty is as a character, right? She's been steeped in this culture of being a housewife. Like everything about her life and her identity kind of revolves around this. And we can say some buzzwords here about like patriarchy and stuff like that, but it really is, that way in this time period. And, people will still argue to this day, but she's been raised with this idea that like, oh, I have to have a husband. I have to be subservient to him. And even the idea of breaking free from that, even though in a lot of ways she's unhappy with where she is as a housewife and stuff like that. Just the idea of breaking free from that system like scares her. It's out of her comfort zone. It's the same as when she was trying to be a model. And there was a part of her that liked it, part of her that liked to challenge it, and there was a part of her that also was like, oh, I want to go back to my area of comfort. Same thing like I've been saying with Joan, being steeped in this idea of like, she's like one step ahead of Betty, right? She's working and she's good in that professional world, but she's still steeped in this idea that like, my end goal here is still to find a man to take care of me. And Peggy is even farther than that, where she's actually determined like, oh, I do actually want to have success on my own. So again, we're seeing like all the sides of kind of the female perspective of this time period. And it's very interesting and very nuanced. I really like it. It does not come off heavy-handed. And I think it's very realistic. Like, I think like lesser shows would have had Betty being like, I don't need no man. I'm going to just immediately jump into being like my own woman. But we have to understand that taking that step for her is such a huge leap from where she's starting from, that it scares her, and she doesn't quite know if she wants to do that or not, or if she wants to go back to her easy life and just like try to ignore the problems that Dawn brings to their life. But that has its own problems too, because just like ignoring it, letting it fester under the surface, is, just like Dawn with himself, like, just ignoring the problem does not make it go away. It festers there. So I think a lot of great character stuff there. I know I've been talking solely about Betty this whole time, but she really is one of the most interesting characters for me. I really like how they've done her storyline. And in terms of like the wife characters from all the shows that I love, right? Sopranos with Carmela, Breaking Bad with Skylar, Margaret with Boardwalk Empire. Betty has actually really stolen the number one spot for me. Like, I really, really like how they've written her. It's very interesting. It's very engaging to the point where I really look forward to seeing Betty-centric episodes. So we'll see how it goes. I did want to talk, this is going to be a little bit of a longer one, because I did want to talk about some of the other storylines. Pete is thinking about it, like, Trudy, his wife, can't get pregnant, or she's having trouble getting pregnant, so she's thinking about adopting. And he was raised in this He was raised in this culture that is, that's something that lesser people do. Like, their family is like pedigree. You had to have an actual child, like very kind of waspy, culture there. And Pete hates his family, right? They're pretty awful people. The brother seems okay, but the mother's awful. And she's like, I'm going to cut you out of your inheritance or whatever if you adopt. But we also learned that they're basically broke as a family because their father wasted all their money. So yeah, we see Pete being Pete. He's annoying, but he's still an interesting character. I don't have too much to say about it. I think we might get more of it. The only thing I wanted to bring up was I love that there's like this irony this dramatic irony that Pete's not even aware of. The fact that his child was adopted that he doesn't even know about. It was adopted by Peggy's family, but still, it's like, isn't this ironic that he's like so against this idea of adoption, and his actual child was adopted. It's a great bit of dramatic irony there. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was, what's his name? Paul Kinsley, the guy with the black girlfriend. So his girlfriend wants to go protest in the South against, like, Jim Crow laws, all the discrimination that's going on. And he doesn't really want to go. So they're going on this like convention to California, and he's using it as an excuse so he doesn't have to go. But then Dawn, at the end of the episode, because of all the problems with Betty, he decides he's going to go to California instead of Paul. So Paul is like really upset by that. And then he calls his girlfriend and pretends it was his idea in order to score points with her. And then at the end of the bus, when he's on the bus with all these like black people, he's talking about how, when you think about it, like, me being a rich white business executive, I'm actually doing like more to help the cause than you might think. I'm a Marxist socialist. Like it's so cringy. I love it. This is like the prototype of like the SJWs that we'll see in the future. And again, the more and more I see of it, the more and more I agree with Jones' assessment that Paul is just using this colored girl, to basically make himself seem more interesting, pretend to be like a hippie and stuff like that, while still being a corporate executive type. So Paul is kind of cringy to me. He seems like kind of a douche, but I don't know. We'll see. A lot of these guys are douches, but this in particular stood out to me. But regardless, that's pretty much the episode. I know this one went on a while, but this series really does like get my imagination going. Like, I'm really reading things into this that, I could be wrong about certain things, but it's thought provoking. I really like, oh my God, this must mean something for the theme, and like connecting it to other characters and other stuff like that. I think it's very a very rich show. There's a lot of subtext here, a lot of material, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So, anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we'll check out the next one soon. Okay, so I literally just spent 8 minutes recording a reaction, and I realized that I did the classic move, which is you hit start streaming instead of start recording, because I'm in OBS right now, which is so funny. I saw a video where Preach Gaming did the same thing, but mine is set up so it doesn't list until I list it, so save myself a little bit of embarrassment there, but okay, I gotta recalibrate myself, because I just was recording, I just went through all my thoughts, and now I'm like, well, shit, I just laid them out. I wonder if I can even download the video to just put it in here. I have no idea. Maybe I will. So maybe this will be just a prelude where I laugh about how I was streamed instead of recorded, and then I'll edit in my actual reactions. I don't have to just repeat myself again. But yeah, interesting episode. Had some issues with this one, but I'll leave it there for now. Talk to you guys later. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back with another episode. Just watched the 11th episode, I think, of season 2. The Jet Set. Now, this episode's interesting. It's, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about the whole, Dawn, okay, so Dawn goes to California with Pete for this convention, but while he's there, he runs into this, beautiful woman who wants to sleep with him. He gets whisked away to her, they're basically just, I think, rich aristocrats or whatever, and they're staying at this mansion, and, they're all, having sex and stuff, and, so Dawn gets whisked there, and he's he just wants a distraction from his home life. And I wasn't sure how I felt about the storyline, because one, I was okay, I get it. Dawn's a Chad, right? He's very handsome and, strong, and, but I don't know. He just shows up in California one day and is all these rich aristocrats come have sex with our daughter. And that's the dude, one of the guys, the Viscount or whatever, it's literally his daughter. And he's come over here and have sex with her. And I was what kind of people are these? That's really gross. I mean, he didn't literally say that, but when afterwards, when they had sex, he came into the bedroom with them, and he's just sitting on the bed with them naked. And it's what the fuck, dude? That's your daughter. I get that they're hippie, rich people who are we don't care about anything. We're just hedonists and having fun. But I just felt the whole sequence was particularly dreamy. And what I mean by dreamy is it felt like a dream. It didn't feel real to me. But it was. I don't think it was it's not meant to be all in Dawn's head or something, but it feels like it should be. This doesn't feel like something to me that actually happens. Again, I know Dawn's super handsome and women are attracted to him. It just felt weird that it just he just shows up and randomly this happens to him. But I get some themes here. He sees the glass he was drinking from is cracked, and it's oh, that's his marriage and stuff, and seeing the kids reminded him of his own kids. I don't know what the story was of that Christian guy. I didn't know, is that Joy's ex-husband or husband or something? I don't think so. I couldn't tell. I didn't know who because he was talking about someone named Isabel. I didn't know if that was one of the women there or something, or someone else, but I don't know. Maybe they'll explain it more, because he was still in California at the end of the episode. And Don just, like, fucking left, like, to go do this. Like, he didn't even tell Pete what was going on. Like, Don's, like, being a bad boss and a bad partner in Sterling Cooper. And I know, some people could say that, like, oh, you're just a bootlicker. Like, who cares? Why are you worrying about the company when you should be worrying about your happiness or whatever? But I'm like, you're there to do a job, Shouldn't you focus on doing your job? I mean, these guys make plenty of time for pussy and drinking all day long, but to literally, like, abandon all your meetings and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna get in this car with this beautiful woman and just go. It's like, come on. I mean, Pete was doing all the work there. And they keep humiliating Pete. There's, like, a scene where he's by the pool and he's, like, trying to say hi to girls and he just walk past him. And I get it, right? Given how he looks like, he's like a dweeb, but still, he's put in the work there to make some clients happen. Especially since Dawn at the beginning was like, are you on vacation or are you here to work? I mean, I guess that's kind of a critique of how some bosses are, where they're like, you don't ever stop working, but I'm going to go do whatever. So, I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of this episode. The girl is named Joy, too, and it's like, okay, I get it. She's his joy. That he's having to choose between his just having fun with these hedonists or, being a good employee or a good, business person and a good husband or whatever. I get it. But what else? There's something going on in New York, which is they find out Kurt, one of the young people they hire, is gay. He just comes right out and says, he's like, I am a homosexual. And you can see Salvatore just being like, what the hell? Like, cause, he struggles with, like, he's gay and he's struggling with that. And to just see this guy just being like, oh. And I'm like, okay. It's the 60s, right? Isn't this, like, a time where you can still get, like, fired for being gay? I know, I mean, it's a time of social, social acceptance is growing, right? That's why women can work there and, like, actually have jobs now. It's why black people can work and stuff like there, too. There was even a line in another episode where they're like, one of the other agencies hired a black kid. And excuse me. My throat's been dry lately. So it's a time of social acceptance, but I was like, I still think, like, they could fire you for that during this time. Cause, it's like, they're just not used to it. Not saying they should fire him, but, I was surprised he's just so out in the open. But again, he's European, which, they're a little bit more tolerant over there. And then Duck is, like, making some, like, movements to buy Sterling Cooper. He used to work for this other, like, agency or something, and then they, like, he wants them to come in and buy Sterling Cooper and make him the president because he's tired of getting passed over, even though, like, Roger tells him, he's not been doing a great job. Like, he's not really, it doesn't seem like he's brought in, like, any big clients. Even Dawn, for all the shit I was giving him in this episode, feels like he still does more than Duck does. But, he just seems like, he just wants he's kind of like Pete. He wants to jump ahead, And then Pete got put in his place a little bit by Dawn. So I think the same thing is going to happen to Duck. But we'll see if the deal goes through or whatever. But I don't know yet. Hey, what's up, everyone? Back with another reaction. Just watched the 12th episode of Season 2, The Mountain King. Now, this is a very interesting episode. Like, on the surface, there's not a lot of connections, at least that are that are popping out to me. Like, like thematically connecting all the storylines. But each of the storylines is very interesting on their own, so that's fine. The first I'll talk about is Dawn goes to see this woman. It's the woman who confronted him when he was at the car dealership, and we later learn this is the person that Dawn has been writing to. She's the one he sent the book to, that book on meditations thing. It turns out that this is the wife of the actual Don Draper. So the real guy who died, and Dick Whitman took over his identity, he had a wife, and she went and found him because he was using Don's name, and we then learned that in the interim between then and now, Dawn, developed something of a relationship with this woman, not like a sexual one or a romantic one. They literally were married because, he's Don Draper and he's, because he assumed Don Draper's identity, he assumed the marriage too. So they were, living as husband and wife, but they weren't like together. And it's a weird relationship. It's very nice, kind of wholesome to be honest, but it's a weird one because it's like, here I am with the man pretending to be my dead husband, and he's like telling her about this girl that he met, which is Betty, when they're younger, and this woman, he can be more honest with her than pretty much anyone else because she knows who he is. As Dick Whitman, and yeah, it's interesting, she's almost like a friend to him. I mean, she is a friend to him, but yeah, I don't know quite what to say about this. Like, I enjoyed the story. I tend to not to like these kind of like wishy-washy, navel-gazing kind of episodes where a character is, in a different place, just trying to find themselves. I'm like, I want to see the character in their environment, interacting with the people that are important to the show. But Don's always been on his own during this storyline. But that makes sense for Don because that's who he is. He's a loner. He's trying to get away from this world. I was like, though, he's missing some important stuff at the business. One, the conference. Two, the meeting of the partners. They decide to sell Sterling Cooper to the British company. So that's, that's something. But I'm like, Don, aren't you going to get in trouble? But I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. They're selling. And presumably, I mean, he's still going to probably work there, but, Duck specifically wanted to be in charge of him because he hates Don. So we'll see how that works out between the two. I could see Don quitting. Although I don't see him quitting advertisement forever. I think he might decide to go on his own and do his own thing. Maybe start his own advertisement company, or maybe just go into another line of work. Maybe he'll advertise for because in this episode he was interested in hot rods, so maybe he'll do his own kind of new business or something. Maybe move. I don't know what's gonna happen with him and Betty. We gotta talk about Betty too, because I really, really like Betty as a character. I've loved her storyline these first few seasons. Her being away from Dawn, I kind of have been like, okay, let's get to the point here. What are we doing? Her storyline is a little bit has the same problem. It's a little bit kind of navel-gazy, where we get a bunch of scenes of her just kind of sitting around, looking sad, looking upset, and behaving in odd ways that I got the way, her odd ways in season 1 were really relatable, and I get it, you're in distress. And she still is in distress, I get that, but it's like, why are you being mean to your friend here who you set up with that guy to sleep with because you wanted to sleep with him, and now you're telling her, like, no one made you sleep with him. I get that she's, I guess, in some ways kind of talking to Dawn in that scene, like, being like, no one makes you cheat, Maybe it was, like, almost an experiment with her to see, like, oh, if I could make her cheat, then that justifies Dawn cheating, because it's like, oh, situations, sometimes this happens. Or if she resisted, then there's no excuse for Dawn, because, maybe that was her mentality. But if that's what it is, it's not super clear to me. And maybe it's just I missed it or something, but I think her storyline after Dawn, the separation, could use a little bit more tuning up. It's a little bit too wishy-washy for me. We got some scenes with her and Sally, which are good. I think the young actress who plays Sally is a pretty good child actor. She's the girl who will grow up to be Sabrina the Teenage Witch on that Netflix show. So that's interesting to see. This is where she got her start. What else here? So we have Pete Campbell. He loses Clearasil because he yells at Trudy how they're not going to adopt a baby, and then she tells her dad, who is the Clearasil guy, and therefore he pulls out, basically, because business is, like, intertwined with their family stuff in this case, even though they've been doing a good job with Clearasil. So, yeah, Pete's letting his, like, I mean, one, it shouldn't affect it. I mean, he really shouldn't have been on that account because, there's too much interpersonal stuff there. But even still, like, he's let, like, his personal problems are affecting the business. So we'll see how they deal with that. I don't think they'll get rid of Pete, though. He's too interesting a character of, like, kind of a pathetic character, but still interesting to watch. So I think he'll stick around. I don't think they'll fire him for this. Then we got Peggy getting Freddie Rumsen's office. I like how, like, most of the guys are, like, super supportive of her. It's like Harry Crane complained that he's the head of television and he needs his own office. But for the most part, everyone's been encouraging her. They're like, congratulations, you did well. Like, they're happy to see her succeed, which, I like it, because it's, it would be so easy to make all these guys just be like, women, having their own office, they should be in the kitchen working, like make them all like caricatures. And yes, a lot of them are, like, really, like, sexist pigs, but I think it's, like, realistic in the sense that, like, yeah, these guys can be, at the bar being like, oh, can't wait to bang this secretary, can't wait to bang, like, they can do that, and then they can also be like, oh, hey, congrats, Peg, I'm glad a woman can get an office here. Like, it's like, there's both sides to it, real kind of, I think, misogyny or whatever you want to call it, is not always like, I hate women, I'm a incel, whatever, kind of thing. It's hypocrisy more than anything. It's the same thing we see with all these guys' lives, right? Where they're like, yeah, we're good, strong, like, Christian men who we have wives and kids and we take care of business and live in American values. And then they go out and bang broads and drink and do all this stuff. So it's like, it's hypocrisy that's at the core of who these guys are. And it's not just this time period. That's all time periods, right? People act one way at home and they act one way separately. So, like I said, I've liked the characterization of how they deal with Peggy. It feels like not trying to make, like, a caricature of, like, here's why the 1960s were sexist. It's like, oh no, these feel like real characters who react realistically to someone they've known for a long time, getting something good. I know I've been going on for a while, but I also want to talk about something important that happened which was with Joan. So she brings her fiance, the doctor, to the office. Earlier in the episode, she tried to have sex with him by riding him, like being on top. And he didn't like that because he's like, men should be on top, not women. I'm in charge, kind of thing. And he felt like sexually like intimidated by her, which I was like, dude, you had a chance to have Christina Hendricks like in your face riding you, and you're gonna turn that down. But regardless, he then, when they go to the office, he sees that Roger Sterling kind of is like, ooh, there's something going on there, and he gets jealous. So he takes her into Dawn's office, and like, I mean, he rapes her pretty much. Like he forces himself onto her. And she's saying, no, I don't want to do this. And he's just going through with it anyway. And she stops fighting, and he's got his like hand on her face, which is like, oh, come on, dude, you're like holding her down. And she just stops fighting him after a little bit. But it's definitely a rape. And you can see that she acts like nothing happened afterwards, because that's who Joan is. She's all about appearances. Like, she wants people to think she's like got the perfect life going on. That's so important to her. So it's more important to her to just pretend like this didn't happen and this wasn't traumatic for her than to admit that, like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit. It's the same thing, like, she's bragging to Peggy afterwards while secretly being jealous that Peggy now gets her own office. So just some wonderful characterization there. It's not... She definitely didn't deserve what happened to her at all. But it is kind of like... I don't know how I should say this, but it's like telling for her character that, like, oh, you prioritized appearances so much that look where you're at versus look where Peggy's at. And that's poking the flaws in her mentality. Again, she didn't deserve what that guy did to her. But it's like, is this going to be a catalyst for her to realize that, like, oh, what I wanted, this kind of perfect, like, American life kind of thing, is not what I'm actually getting, and it's not what I actually want. And can I change my circumstances to actually be happy? Now, a lot of characters are dealing with that. Bert Cooper is dealing with that right now when he's selling the company. So, it's an interesting question that a lot of these guys deal with. It's like, what is happiness? That's what they sell. That's what their product is. It's happiness. Yet none of them can really achieve it because it doesn't really exist. Like, they're all, like, no one knows what they want. They're all struggling for it, and they're just kind of distracting themselves as they get there. But I've been going on long enough about this episode. We'll wrap up the season finale next time, and we'll talk about my thoughts on the whole season. So talk to you guys then. And we're done with season 2. And what an episode to end it on. This one was really good. Everything was very thematically tied together, and they used the narrative device of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is happening during this time, to kind of connect everything, and like all the characters are like dealing with it in the back of their mind. Really well done. So there's 3 storylines going on. One is the merger with the London company. It goes through, and what Duck Phillips knows, he's going to be made president of Sterling Cooper, and he ends up telling Pete Campbell, which is a stupid decision. Like, why tip your hand to Pete? Like, I guess, he thought he was on his side and, like, was trying to get allies in the office, but it's like, you don't need him. Pete will suck up to you no matter what. Just save it until you're in charge, because what Pete does is he decides to go to Don and tell him the truth, too, because I think he respects Don more than Duck, and also I think he's hedging his bets a little bit of being like, whoever wins, will probably keep me on. And there was a great detail where he was talking about how they just learned that, like, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. seized a ship headed for Cuba, a Russian ship. And he was like, maybe the Russians will learn to back off now that we took a stand. Saying the same thing to Dawn, basically being like, if we take a stand here, we can win, and so during the meeting, when Duck's made president, he uses the meeting basically to be like, yeah, we're gonna gut the creative department. I'm gonna be in charge. Like, fuck the creatives. It doesn't go his way. Dawn basically is like, I'm gonna quit if this happens. And they're like, we have a contract, and it's like, no, we don't have a contract actually. So Don can do whatever he wants, and so Duck is kind of out of options. And I think they're gonna fire Duck basically because Don's more important. They know that. So we'll see what happens. We don't know quite what's going on. They said the merger is still on, but it's up in the air what's going to happen to Duck. And this is compounded by him starting to drink again. So he's, I think he's a recovering alcoholic or something. So, yeah, that's not good. But we have all that going on. We have Betty, so she learns she's pregnant this episode. It's Dawn's kid. It's probably from when they had sex at her father's house. So she doesn't know what she wants to do. She doesn't know if she wants to get rid of it or keep it. She doesn't know if she wants to take Dawn back or not. And so she goes to a bar and ends up having an affair with a guy. One, to get back at Dawn a little bit and to be like, I think to give herself some peace of mind, to be like, oh, well, now I don't have to basically live in shame of like, oh, my husband cheated on me. It's like, I now have something that I can like reassure myself of. It's like, well, I did this too, and I also think she's just trying to take control of her life a little bit. And also, I mean, she's just dealing with all the stress and she's just like looking for distractions, the same like Dawn does. So she does that. And then at the end of the episode, it looked like she might tell him what happened, but instead she tells him that she's pregnant. And he ends up like holding her hand, and it seems like they're gonna like, patch things up. And because Dawn wrote her a really nice letter that kind of like moved her to tears. And it's like, it was right after her affair. So it's like, if he had said something like this before, but his first instinct was to run away. When there was conflict, that's Dawn's, MO. Like, he runs away rather than just being like, hey, let me tell you the truth. Let me apologize and show you what you mean to me. This wouldn't have happened. But that's Dawn's whole thing. You just can't really accept who he is. And it totally fits with his character, but we'll see what they do. I don't know if they can keep going on like this, though. I think these tensions that they both refuse to acknowledge. Now Betty has something she refuses to acknowledge, which is her affair and all the other stuff going on with her. I don't know if I think these secrets are going to burst out of them. Like, this episode deals a lot with truthfulness. We have Peggy finally telling Pete, about their secret child. And, it's obviously heartbreaking for Pete because he's trying to, have a child right now too. And it's like, oh, because the world's about to end in their minds, it's like, just let's get it out in the open. Like, people don't want to die with secrets. It's not, I don't think that's what people like to do. So, yeah, I think that, truth will weigh out. It will come out here, and I think they're gonna have to deal with it. And I don't quite know what'll happen. So this episode leaves a lot open. We don't know exactly what's gonna happen with all these different characters. And leaves on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But it was a nice moment, a nice episode that I think was very thematically tight. Overall, I thought this season was maybe a little less tight than season 1. I mean, it's great moments in the season overall. A little bit too wishy-washy during the parts when Dawn and Betty are separated. I can kind of get why they wanted to do that. They needed to give the characters like space to, be apart and think. But Dawn is just too gone this season. It's like he's not on a different show almost. It felt like he was on, what show? It reminded me of Californication. If you guys ever saw that show, it's about this like writer, and I always rolled my eyes at it because he's like, yeah, I'm a writer, and then he just like walks down the street and like women are like throwing themselves at him. He's like, oh, I'm so sad, even though all these women want to sleep with me. It's like, it was a douchey show that I watched a fair chunk of it, but it reminded me too much of that. Like, I can believe Don picks up all these women he picks up, but in California, they were just like, that girl just threw herself at him like out of nowhere, and I'm like, come on. So I don't like that part of the story, and I was like, I get what it was about, it was about like Dawn deciding whether he was going to run away or face the truth. Like, those nomads were like kind of running away from their they weren't engaging in the world. They're just, having pleasure. Which, I mean, you could argue is like, you could die at any moment, so why would you choose to weigh yourself down with all the bullshit of modern life? But I think what the show is trying to say is that, like, family and connections, that's what's important. And at the end here, Dawn actually chooses to go back to that, rather than just simple pleasure or, whatever. But yeah, overall, interesting season. Like I said, not as great as season 1 to me was, but I still think there's a lot of great material here, and I can't wait to watch the next one. So I'll take a little break here. I always like to sit with it for a while and just absorb what I watched, but these episodes do get me thinking about a lot of different stuff. Like, you guys have seen me ramble on and on about the different themes and what it could mean for the characters and where they're going to go. It's a very thought-provoking show that is more like some kind of classic novel than a TV show. In the same also vein that people say that, like, literary fiction, nothing ever happens. Kind of in this show, nothing ever happens too. But it's good. As a character piece, as a character study, really well done. And yeah, can't wait for future seasons and to finally be done with the show and be able to talk about the whole thing. So I will leave that here for now. Thank you guys for watching so much as always, and stay tuned for the next season coming soon. I make love with the man, not the woman. Russell, Sean, Heart of Markness, Logan, Clean, John Reyna, Jesse Sterling, Andrew Stewart, Ops Gracing Media, Daz J. Kit, Conan Higgins, Sam Cedarlin, Don Lucania, Celery Man, Jenna Marie Johnson, and Brad Smith Studios.